Have you ever stopped to wonder what hidden algorithms actually determine your paycheck? It's so easy to just look at a pay stub and see a bunch of numbers, right? But beneath the surface, we're all participating in this massive, incredibly dynamic simulation, the labor market. So let's dive right into this explainer and uncover what's really going on behind the scenes.
Welcome to our explainer on Chapter 19, Earnings and Discrimination. Think of this as the system boot up for our economic simulation. I'm so excited to guide you through the hidden rules, the glitches, and the underlying code that decides who earns what and why. All right, let's get our system online.
Here's our menu for today. We've got 5 core modules to explore. First, decoding the wage equation. Second, human capital and signaling. Third, the superstar phenomenon. Fourth, pushing wages above equilibrium. And fifth, the economics of discrimination. It's a packed lineup, so let's just jump right in.
Module 1. Decoding the wage equation, the baseline algorithms of labor. Okay, to really understand the labor market, we first have to look at the foundational rules and variables that output a worker's wage. It's not just a flat, arbitrary rate for everyone, right? Enter the concept of compensating differentials. Basically, these are wage differences that explicitly offset the non-monetary attributes of a job. Imagine sliding the danger, or, the dullness parameter way up in our simulation. If a job is physically exhausting or super risky, like coal mining, the system is mathematically forced to increase the equilibrium wage just to attract willing workers, especially when you compare it to a safe, comfortable office job.
But wait, wages aren't just about danger or safety. Take a look at these unmeasured variables: natural ability, effort, and chance. While things like years of education are super easy for economists to track, these harder-to-measure variables actually account for over half of all wage variations. Think about how much of your own career trajectory might rely on a lucky roll of the dice. If a worker trained for years to repair vacuum tube televisions, and then solid-state electronics were suddenly invented, their skills became obsolete literally overnight. That is a terrible roll of the dice in our simulation, and it profoundly affects their wage.
Looking back at historical snapshots of baseline labor dynamics is fascinating. Whether we're talking about a bustling 19th century street market or today's digital gig economy, these exact same fundamental forces of supply, demand, and compensation have governed human markets for centuries.
Moving on to Module 2, human capital and signaling, decoding the education algorithm.
So let's shift gears a bit and look at how our simulation actually values schooling. Everyone knows a degree generally boosts your wage. But let's contrast two radically different economic interpretations of exactly why that is. On one side, we have human capital theory. This is the traditional view that education teaches you tangible skills, making you inherently more productive. But on the other side, we have signaling theory. This one proposes that education doesn't actually teach you much of value. Rather, it acts as a massive sorting mechanism. It's just a way for workers to reveal their innate high ability to employers. So the crucial takeaway here is this. Under the human capital view, giving everyone a degree makes everyone more productive and richer. But under the signaling view, raising education levels for absolutely everyone wouldn't actually raise overall wages, because that crucial sorting mechanism would be completely destroyed.
To truly grasp the signaling perspective, consider this quote: "What does it take for an action to be an effective signal? Obviously, it must be costly. A college degree only acts as a strong signal beacon to employers because it takes immense time, effort, and money. It's relatively easier and way less costly for a highly talented person to sit through exams and graduate than it is for a less talented person. Therefore, the degree reliably signals that hidden ability directly to the market."
That brings us to Module 3, the superstar phenomenon, why top performers absolutely break the scale.
Now, this brings up a fascinating anomaly. Why is it that the absolute best carpenters in the world earn a great but relatively normal living, while the best athletes or actors make millions upon millions of dollars? What exactly is the difference in their code? Well, the answer lies in 2 strict system parameters that must overlap to generate a superstar anomaly. Step 1. Every customer in the market wants to enjoy the goods supplied by the best producer. And Step 2. Technology makes it possible to supply every customer at a low cost. A phenomenal carpenter can only build one cabinet at a time, strictly limiting their customer base. But what about entertainers? Let's consider some specific examples from our source text: Robert Downey Jr. and Maria Sharapova. They enjoy astronomical incomes entirely driven by mass technological distribution. Because film can be easily copied and tennis matches can be broadcast worldwide simultaneously, technology allows millions of people to consume their exact services at the exact same time. This effectively shatters the standard wage limits that bound our carpenter.
Module 4. Pushing wages above equilibrium, system overrides, and hacks.
Up until now, we've really only looked at the natural equilibrium of the market. Let's shift our simulation's focus and see what happens when specific forces hack or override that standard code of supply and demand. We've broken down 3 major disruptive forces that artificially push wages up. First, minimum wage laws, which set a legal floor primarily affecting the least skilled. Second, labor unions, which are worker associations that leverage the threat of strikes to demand higher pay. And third, efficiency wages, where firms voluntarily pay above market rates. Now, it's absolutely vital to note what you should take away from this. All 3 of these system overrides result in pushing the wage higher than the equilibrium point. And in our economic simulation, pushing wages artificially high creates a surplus of labor, otherwise known as unemployment. Let's focus on unions for a second. Consider this powerful number, 10 to 20%. Studies suggest that unionized workers earn an impressive 10 to 20% more than similar non-union workers. This is a massive demonstration of how collective bargaining can successfully override standard market rates to benefit a specific group.
And then there's the fascinating concept of efficiency wages. This is the theory that paying high wages is actually completely profitable for a firm because it reduces turnover, increases worker effort, and raises the quality of job applicants. I know, it sounds totally counterintuitive, right? Why on earth would a business purposefully pay more than the market demands? Well, simply put, they're trying to optimize their workforce algorithm. By paying a premium, they hack the system to attract the absolute best talent and keep them highly motivated.
Finally, Module 5. The economics of discrimination. Glitches in the market code.
We're now entering our final crucial module. We're going to neutrally examine the source data to see exactly how our economic simulation processes prejudice and discrimination. This leads to a pretty provocative question. Can competitive markets cure employer discrimination? It's a heavy topic. But the economic data points us to a highly surprising, systemic answer about how the market naturally self-corrects.
Let's walk through this logical sequence. Imagine a scenario where discriminatory employers decide to pay lower wages to a specific group of workers. Step 2, non-discriminatory employers step in and happily hire this artificially cheaper but equally skilled labor. This leads directly to Step 3. Those profit-maximizing, non-discriminatory firms significantly lower their costs, outcompete, and eventually replace the discriminatory ones. So the raw profit motive actually acts as a natural, algorithmic antidote to bigoted hiring practices.
A fascinating historical case study brilliantly illustrates this point. Consider the early 20th century segregated streetcars in the southern United States. The raw profit motive actually wanted integrated streetcars. Why? Because businesses wanted to maximize passenger revenue and reduce the steep costs of running separate cars. But this natural market cure was entirely blocked by a massive system override. Local government laws literally mandated segregation. The market wanted profit, but the government forced discrimination.
Which leads us to a powerful thought to leave you with today. If the competitive market naturally cures employer discrimination through the profit motive, how much of today's wage gaps are actually sustained by customer preferences and government mandates? It's a really deep question that encourages us to think about how our collective societal choices ultimately shape the invisible algorithms governing our economy. Thank you so much for diving into this explainer with me, and keep questioning the data.